said, why is this review process taking so long? I'm ready to move on. The Knicks got lucky in Game 2. The Sixers got lucky the other day. Let's move on to Game 6 and have another epic game.
Fair enough. Then let me get you back to what you said in our meeting this morning, because I thought it was really interesting. When Joel Embiid came back for the very end of the regular season, I thought to myself, what a warrior. He could so easily have not tried to make it back here. He's got the knee, all that kind of stuff. Let it rest, come back and play in the fall. I thought this is an extraordinary act on his part, whatever happens. So what has actually befallen him and the narrative here is something that surprises me enormously, but I think you sum it up perfectly.
I think this game tonight is about Joel Embiid. Before the playoffs, I said on NBA Today with Malika, he's becoming the tragic hero of the NBA. All the injuries, all the stuff that he goes through every single year. And like this, 2 weeks and a few kind of dirty plays later, and a bad Game 5 that Tyrese Maxey bailed him out in, he's gone from tragic hero to tragic villain in a lot of quarters. And I also think it's been a little bit like it got negative real fast for a guy who just had knee surgery, is clearly hobbled, came back and saved their season, has freaking Bell's palsy on top of everything else, and is trying to gut this out. But look, his playoff record hasn't measured up to his regular season record, and every one of these big games, you only get so many of them. He was not good in Game 5. They bailed him out, and they need a big Joel Embiid game somehow. But, man, what a career.
It is, you know, it's funny because we were talking about Batman earlier, and it is from the Batman movie where they said you either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain, and that's sort of what we're seeing happen here. And Legs, you know, there is, to some degree, it has always been other people's fault. The Sixers keep coming up short, and it was always the coach's fault. It was always Brian Colangelo's fault. It was Ben Simmons' fault. It was James Harden's fault. In this case, I think that the city and the fan base have sort of said, no, wait a minute. If we lose now, it's actually his fault.
Yeah, look, there's definitely going to be a sentiment, and there's going to be people in Philadelphia, and look, they tend to overreact to a lot of this stuff anyway, and a lot of people are going to say, that's it, I've had enough, move on from Joel Embiid. I'm talking about the fan base, even maybe some media people, because it's another year in which he's not as good as he is and as dominant as he is in the regular season, and what we watch every single night. Look, he's doing what he can. The one thing I'll say about Joel Embiid, he needs to understand, if he's on the court, people aren't going to care as much about the limitations. It's how you play. And I thought the way that he tried to close out Game 4 by spending most of the last 6 minutes, you know, in the left wing, in the left corner, not demanding the basketball in the areas of the floor where he can be dominant, it was a head scratcher. And people want to point to Nick Nurse. They want to point to leadership at the point guard position. I look at Embiid. Embiid's going to get the ball wherever he wants. I've never heard a great player ever say, I didn't get the ball enough. It just doesn't happen. The ball's a magnet to those guys. Their players on that team want to get him the basketball. So if he's on the court, he needs to operate in the areas of the floor where he's dominant. And then, look, if he has an off night, he has an off night. He'll still have to carry that into the offseason. But I think at least people in Philadelphia could live with that result than what they saw at the end of Game 4 when he was a non-factor when it mattered most.
Let's be fair. He had 50 points in Game 3.
Yeah.
50 on one leg. Like and they are plus 46 with him on the floor in this series. In 37 little itty-bitty minutes with him on the bench, they're minus 48. It's hard to be that bad. And they have Maxey, Tobias Harris, all their best dudes are on the court when Joel Embiid is resting. Minus 48 in 37 minutes. That's hard to do.
So much of this conversation, and that actually sets up what I wanted to say to you, Drea, perfectly, I think it's completely unfair. Look, the dirty plays are the dirty plays. And if you want to dislike that stuff, particularly the one from Game 3, that's a separate conversation. But as far as his inability in this series to rise up and put this team on his shoulders, he's got a meniscus. He's got Bell's palsy. He had a migraine. He's long overdue to break his face because you know that's coming. It does it every single. I mean, the guy is out there giving you everything he possibly has. He's like that character in the Monty Python movie where like they cut off his arm and his legs and it's like a flesh wound, and he's still out there doing the best that he can. Like. To some degree, I think we are making him the villain, taking the dirty play out of it, the villain a little bit unfairly. Will you meet me there?
Yeah, the Monty Python reference was wonderful, Greeny. Yeah. That's why you're one of the best. 'Tis but a flesh wound. But I think Joel Embiid, you have to give him more credit because of how he is probably feeling physically. When you're physically hurting, it takes a toll on you mentally, it takes a toll on your thought processes, the way you view the game. And we're talking about him floating around at the wing at times. It's probably because he's hurting, or it's probably because he's tired. So if he floats around at the wing a couple of times and then finds his way back legs, like you said, to his spots on the floor, he's got to get aggressive at times. But I don't think we're going to see him be the Joel Embiid that he was all season because of how he's feeling physically. Like, it's wonderful that he's even out there. In my opinion, I think he needs some credit. Now, the next conversation is, why does this always happen in the playoffs? Why is he always injured in the playoffs? And what do the 76ers need to do to ensure that he's healthy in the playoffs? But that's a different conversation for a different season.
Right. It's certainly not the one for today, because they have 9 o'clock tip-off tonight to worry about and try and keep their season alive and bring it back to the Garden on Saturday. We're going to make our picks for this game a little bit later in this hour. But, Legs, let me ask you this. We did the Batman-Robin. We're doing the Batman-Robin thing. For the Sixers to win tonight, give me the roles. Do they need Embiid to be Batman and Maxey to be Robin, or reversed?
I think Embiid to be Batman in this one. Look, Tyrese Maxey's been sensational. They're not here. The season's not still ongoing if he doesn't have the heroic performance that he did in the last game. You know that there's going to be some different coverage on him in this game. Joel Embiid they have no answer for him when he's aggressive and at his best. There is no answer for Joel Embiid. Everything in front of him is an advantage for the Sixers. So he has to be big. They're not going to survive another game in which Joel Embiid plays the way he did the other night. It's just not going to happen. His ball security was awful. He wasn't very efficient offensively. He has to be closer to the player that we saw earlier in this series, closer to the player that we saw in a handful of games when he first came back from the injury after the long layoff. I don't think they survive this game unless Joel Embiid is dominant.
25 or more. Would you bet 25 points tonight for Embiid or more?
I'm going over
30?
25.
Wanna try to boast at what I look like. Them down, try to wear, I pull up all brains. Jimmy with the heat, I'm on fire. It's NBA, ESPN.